William Afton, the co-creator of Fazbear Entertainment LLC, was probably born sometime in the 1940s, based on the fact that he has an established company by 1970 and has his first child in 1968. It's assumed that he was born in England due to the fact that when we finally hear his voice, he has a British accent.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips.
I guess he could have just inherited the accent from his parents, but I'm going to assume that he grew up in the United Kingdom. Usually, people end up with a dialect similar to those around them, even if their parents have a different accent. But rather than the typical English diet of crumpets or fish and chips, he ended up developing a taste for an Italian dish. It's speculated that during William's childhood, he witnessed something that would change his life forever: the wonderful Fredbear Singin' Show. For just the price of 50 cents, you could grab yourself some pizza and a drink, all while being entertained by a singing bear dressed in a top hat. It was simple, wholesome entertainment, the kind of thing designed to make children laugh and parents spend. The ad for the Fredbear Singin' Show is designed in the style of rubber hose animation, made popular during the 1920s and 30s by cartoons such as Betty Boop, Steamboat Willie, and Popeye, all of whom have their own horror movies either released or scheduled. Most likely, William saw the show as a kid visiting America between 1945 and 1950, given that a pizza and drink only costed 50 cents, an amount that would be worth about $9 in 2025. I can only imagine young William was captivated by the top hat wearing bear performing on stage, filling him with a feeling he could never forget: wonder. As he grew up, he wanted to give that feeling to other people. At some point in his young adulthood, he became the father of his first child, Michael Afton, who was born in 1968. The details of who Michael's mother is are scarce, but in Five Nights at Freddy's security breach, we see a family of staff bots sitting at a table, which appears to represent the Afton family, and there's a mother present wearing purple. We'll come back to her. Mascot-centric character experiences were starting to take off in the US during this time, so I think it's likely this is when Afton moved his family to the United States to make his dream a reality. During the late 1960s, Afton met a fellow entrepreneur named Henry Emily, and together they founded a new company. Today, that company is known as Fazbear Entertainment LLC, but it was probably originally called Fredbear Entertainment or something because the Fazbear character would not be created until later. This new company was the intersection of their shared passion for robotics, family fun, and fine dining. Or at least dining. I don't eat cheese, so when I was at Universal's FNaF celebration, I just filled my plate with the diced chicken intended to go in the Caesar salad, and that was fine. Given what we know, it's likely that Afton never forgot the show that first inspired him as a child and purchased the rights to Fredbear Singin' Show. Then, in 1970, they opened up the very first Fall Fest. This was an annual autumn fair held in the pumpkin and cornfields of a local farm, where for the price of a ticket, families could enjoy rides, food stalls, games, and of course, performances from the singing, dancing characters. There was Fredbear, the friendly bear in a formal top hat, Chica, the cheerful chicken with a cupcake, Bonnie, the bunny with a Brian May guitar. Okay, I actually have no idea if it's a Brian May guitar, I just wanted to keep the alliteration thing going, but it kind of looks like one, and Brian May is British, so that might be my new headcanon from now on. And Foxy, the mischievous pirate, who, if you haven't figured it out, is a fox. Also of note, there's a scarecrow that resembles a character that would later be known as the puppet at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Fall Fest was a success, despite a tragedy in 1973 where a fire broke out across several rides, including the very creepy carousel and the Phaser Blast or Phaser Blast booth shooting game. I'm not sure which one they were going for with the pronunciation, resulting in the death of a staff member named Fiona Murray. This would be the first of many fires that plagued William Afton's businesses. Even so, the fair continued to run annually until at least 1983, but by then, William Afton and Henry Emily had set their sights on something much bigger. The late 1970s marked the beginning of a new era in family entertainment. Across America, restaurants like Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater and Showbiz Pizza were turning food and fun into big bucks, offering parents convenience and the children the promise of endless games and smiling mascots. Their success was impossible to ignore. They got to work on Fredbear's Family Diner, a small but ambitious restaurant aimed to capture the same joy and the same profit that defined the decade. Fredbear's would open sometime in the late 70s. As William Afton's businesses grew, so did his family, with a second son, whose name we don't know, being born in the late 70s, followed by a daughter named Elizabeth a year or two later. Elizabeth has a British accent despite growing up in the US, but I still stand by my belief that William Afton must have come over from the UK. Fazbear Entertainment began as a company built on wonder, a dream to bring joy and imagination to life through music, characters, games, and food. But that dream soon warped under the weight of their ambition. In chasing his dream, William Afton built the very thing that would destroy him. If you want to understand what truly turned William Afton into a monster, how Fazbear Entertainment mirrors the greed and denial of real-world pizzeria empires, and how Afton himself became a representation of the anxieties of the game's creator, Scott Cawthon, then stick around to the end of this video. Welcome to Horror History. My name is CZ, and I will be your waiter today. Few horror franchises have managed to turn children's entertainment into existential dread quite like Five Nights at Freddy's. What started as a small indie game in 2014 has mutated into one of the most recognizable and obsessively dissective horror series of the century. Animatronic mascots, haunted pizzerias, possessed AIs, and a timeline messier than the slices in a Chuck E. Cheese pizza. Created by Scott Cawthon, the franchise was born out of rejection. Before Five Nights at Freddy's, Cawthon had made wholesome, family-friendly games, one of which, Chipper and Sons Lumber Co., was mocked by players for its unintentionally unsettling mechanical animal characters. Instead of giving up, he decided to embrace what frightened people most about his work. If people thought his creations looked like haunted animatronics, he would make them haunted animatronics. Five Nights at Freddy's was born. The Five Nights at Freddy's franchise quickly spiraled into a multimedia mythos spanning over a dozen games, a movie series, multiple novels, graphic novels, and an endless stream of fan theories.
Hello? Hello? I wanted to record a message for you to help you get settled in on your first night.
There's basically an endless amount of side content available, but for my analysis of Afton today, I'll be looking at the canon material in the mainline Five Nights at Freddy's game series. I might show visuals from the movies or other sources, but keep in mind those exist in a separate canon. So, to fully understand what makes Afton tick and to uncover the blueprint of his downfall, we first have to spring back to the darkest year in his life. By 1983, Fredbear's Family Diner was a booming success. Families flocked there for pizza, arcade games, and most of all, to see the restaurant's beloved mascots, Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, and Foxy. The all-singing, all-dancing animatronics had become icons of family fun, but not everyone loved them. William Afton's youngest son, despite finding comfort in the stuffed toy versions of the mascots, had developed a deep fear of the real ones. Their glassy eyes and jerky movements terrified him. The mere sight of them could reduce him to tears, earning him the nickname the Crying Child. As with many siblings, his older brother Michael saw this fear as an opportunity. Over the course of one fateful week, Michael tormented his younger brother relentlessly, locking him in his room, hiding around the house, and leaping out from the shadows wearing a mask of one of the animatronics. What I find funny is that William Afton must have known about this bullying, and yet it seems like he did nothing as a parent. He had to have known about it. How else would he have programmed the story of what happened into these arcade cabinet minigames? On Thursday, while visiting their father at work, Michael left his brother behind at the diner, forcing the young boy to walk home alone. Then, hiding in the boy's bed, he waited, ready to frighten him once again. That Saturday was the crying child's birthday, and he had arranged a celebration at Fredbear's Family Diner, hoping to make it special. But Michael and his friends, all wearing the mascot masks, cornered the boy, laughing as they carried him towards the Fredbear animatronic. They placed his head inside the mechanical mouth, but the boy's tears caused the machinery to malfunction, and Fredbear's jaw clamped shut, crushing the child's head. Which is part of the reason I think the character's appearance at the Fall Fest were probably just costumes and not animatronics that would be destroyed every time it rained. This devastating tragedy, the loss of his younger son, shattered Afton. But soon after, his grief transformed into rage against the one person that he held responsible, his partner, Henry Emily. It was Henry who had designed and created the Springlocked animatronics.
Small souls trapped in prisons of my making, now set to new purpose.
Psychologically, he may have been experiencing projection, when a person attributes their own feelings or failures to someone else. In this case, it was his own failings as a parent that resulted in his kid being put in a dangerous situation. The tragedy had no real villain. Michael and his friends were being cruel, but they never intended for anyone to get hurt. Yet, William's grief was determined to find a scapegoat, which honestly I think is not that unreasonable. Henry Emily probably could have designed these things better, knowing that they'd constantly be around kids whose parents most likely brought them there so that they don't have to watch them carefully. Let's face it, that's why these restaurants exist. While the loss of his son had broken him, Afton's ego would not allow him to walk away from Fazbear Entertainment. The death of the crying child led to Fredbear's Family Diner being shut down. But that didn't stop William and Henry. Refusing to let the tragedy end their work, they opened a brand new restaurant under the name Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike, where fantasy and fun come to life.
This was in 1983, as seen on the tokens used in the arcade in Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted. Still haunted by what had happened, William's partner Henry became increasingly concerned about safety. To prevent another incident, he designed a new animatronic, the Puppet. Its sole purpose was to protect the children, to ensure that they never left the building unsupervised, and to keep them safe from harm. To his credit, he did not have Megan as a cautionary tale about the dangers of this approach. Later in 1983, after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had been open for some time, William found the perfect opportunity to exact revenge on his partner. One evening, he came across Henry's young daughter, Charlotte Emily, finding her locked outside the restaurant.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, No one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours.
William saw his chance. The girl was alone, helpless. In a twisted act of vengeance, he killed her, leaving her body out in the rain and taking from Henry what he believed had been taken from him. But this act didn't bring him peace. If anything, it only awakened something inside of him. Sometime between 1983 and 1985, William Afton founded Afton Robotics LLC and opened a sister location to Freddy's called Circus Baby's Pizzasworld, a new family entertainment center promising even greater interactivity. After the success of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, there was a buzz of excitement surrounding the new restaurant. But behind the colorful facade, Afton had far darker intentions. For this new venture, he created an entirely new cast of animatronics, the Funtime series. Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, Funtime Chica, a new character, Ballora, and the star of the show, Circus Baby. It's worth noting that the two new characters, Ballora and Circus Baby, seem to represent his real family members, with Ballora seemingly representing his wife, and Circus Baby being created for his daughter, Elizabeth.
She's so pretty and shiny. Didn't you make her just for me?
Each was built to captivate children with music, movement, and charm, but hidden deep within their blueprints were Afton's true designs.
There's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state-of-the-art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand.
These animatronics' primary objective was not to entertain. They were machines built to lure in and capture children. The attack on Charlotte Emily had wakened a sadistic side inside of Afton. Now, beneath the corporate polish, a killer was engineering his next victims. Each new animatronic served a purpose. Funtime Freddy was equipped with parental tracking, voice mimicry, and an internal storage tank to hold a captured child. Ballora could misdirect and deter through remote activation. Funtime Foxy could imitate familiar voices to draw children in closer. Only Circus Baby appeared innocent, seemingly designed to entertain rather than capture.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream.
But she too was programmed to do something far darker, to both lure in and then kill children herself. As the opening of Circus Baby's Pizzasworld neared, William Afton invited a small group of children to attend a private trial event, a test run of the new attraction. Among them was his youngest daughter, Elizabeth, who was fascinated by Circus Baby.
Daddy, she can make balloons. Have you seen her make balloons?
Afton, however, knew the truth. He knew the dangers his machines posed and warned Elizabeth to stay away. He acted like a protective father, but once again, he failed to be one.
Daddy, you let the other children go see her. Why won't you let me go?
Despite everything that he had already lost, Afton doesn't seem to have learned any lessons and leaves his daughter unattended in the pizzeria, and Elizabeth jumps at the chance to sneak away for a closer look at Circus Baby.
Daddy isn't watching. Don't tell Daddy that I'm here. I wanted to watch your show too. I don't know why he won't let me come see you. You're wonderful.
The animatronic doll had been following her coding and had lured and killed each one of the visiting children one by one. And now, with Elizabeth, the only child left, Circus Baby completes her program. Once again, William Afton's creation had claimed the life of one of his children, and Elizabeth's soul now possessed the animatronic she was so fascinated by. After the tragic death of Elizabeth Afton, Circus Baby's Pizzasworld was shut down before it ever reached its grand opening. To cover up the incident, Fazbear Entertainment issued a public statement claiming that a gas leak was to blame. In the weeks that followed, William quietly ordered the employees of Afton Robotics to remove the animatronics from the facility under the cover of night. Soon after, the building was sold. Despite growing speculation and public curiosity about the restaurant's sudden closure, William Afton refused to comment. He buried the truth just as he had buried his guilt. Once again, he had lost a child, and once again, it was his own creation that had taken them. His story serves as a modern-day equivalent to the horror classic Frankenstein. In Frankenstein, spoiler warning for a 207-year-old story, I guess, a mad doctor in an experiment to create life creates a monster who runs amok and kills his fiancée. Like Victor Frankenstein, William Afton had become a creator of monsters. But where Frankenstein sought scientific discovery, Afton sought to fulfill his evil intentions. Both men pay for their creations with the lives of those they loved. Frankenstein's creation killed his fiancée, Elizabeth, while Afton's machines claimed his daughter's life, also named Elizabeth.
Coincidence?
I think maybe, but probably not. Yet, unlike Victor Frankenstein, who recoiled from what he had made, Afton embraced his machines. Rather than trying to shut them down, he continued to use them as instruments of murder. On June 26, 1985, William Afton chose his next victims, 5 children attending a friend's birthday party at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza: Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy. Unlike Charlotte Emily, there was nothing special about these children. Afton didn't choose them because of who they were, but rather just because they were there. For William, it was now not about revenge, it was about the fun of the hunt and the kill. He planned to use the very creations he and Henry Emily had built to inspire joy as a mask for his crimes. Hidden inside one of the animatronic suits, he could move unseen, a monster disguised as a mascot. Each suit was fitted with what was referred to as a spring-lock mechanism, allowing them to operate as both an animatronic and a bodysuit. In animatronic mode, the characters could move on their own, but in bodysuit mode, the machinery would be pulled back, allowing a person to step inside and wear it like a costume. Afton found a spring Bonnie suit in storage and put it on. He then approached the 5 children and lured them all into the dark back rooms of the restaurant. When it was over, Afton was wary of being caught removing the bodies from the restaurant, so instead, he stuffed each child inside of an animatronic suit. He placed Gabriel and Freddy, Jeremy and Bonnie, Susie and Chica, Cassidy and Golden Freddy, and Fritz in Foxy, because they both start with F. Okay, I don't actually know if that was the reason. Probably not, because Freddy also starts with F. The souls of the children now possessed the metal cases that they were hidden in. I think this shows a level of cruelty in Afton that goes beyond taking their lives. The kill itself wasn't enough. He wants them to physically suffer.
As if what he had already done wasn't enough. He found a new way to desecrate, to humiliate, to destroy. As if the suffering wasn't enough. The loss of innocence, the loss of everything to so many people.
After the children were reported missing, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was investigated, as it was the last place they had been seen. Afton and Emily allowed police to search the property and provided security footage from that day. The tapes led investigators to suspect Afton, and he was arrested on suspicion of taking the children. But, as no bodies were ever found, Afton was later released. After the investigation, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza reopened, but over time, customers began to complain about the foul odor coming from the animatronics. Some even reported blood and mucus being visible around the eyes and mouths of the mascots. But to anyone who's ever been to one of these pizza arcade restaurants, foul odors and creepy mascots aren't exactly out of the ordinary, so I guess that's why it was never connected to the missing children. I imagine due to the bad press and subsequent arrest, Afton would have been forced to step down as CEO by the board. In Five Nights at Freddy's 2, we hear Phone Guy talking about the staff trying to get in contact with the restaurant's previous owner, referring to William Afton. Though, he retained a smaller role within the company, much like that time Papa John said the N-word and got replaced.
He has no pizza experience. He's never been in the pizza category. I would just say, stay tuned. The day of reckoning will come. The record will be straight.
Why not set the record straight now? I mean, what is it about the record that's not straight?
Stay tuned.
That guy might be as ominous as Afton himself. But with the children never found and the hygiene complaints, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed down. But you can't keep a good moneymaker down for long. And by October 1987, Fazbear Entertainment unveiled a new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, now under new management. The company promised a fresh start, new safety protocols, a family-friendly atmosphere, and a renewed commitment to fun.
I want to reassure you, Fazbear Entertainment is committed to family fun and above all, safety.
But behind the PR smiles and corporate slogans, the motivation was the same as ever: profit. What had begun as a passion project between two inventors had become a corporate machine, driven by greed and nostalgia. Chains like Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater had shown just how much money could be made from families looking for cheap fun. And like CEC Entertainment, Fazbear Entertainment wasn't about to let bad press stop them. For a time, the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza seemed to thrive. Families returned, the animatronics performed, and it appeared that Fazbear Entertainment had finally put its sordid past behind it. But the restaurant was soon put on lockdown in November 1987 as authorities launched a new investigation.
Especially concerning any previous employees. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it.
In an attempt to understand what was happening, the new management tried to contact William Afton, but as he hadn't been part of the company's leadership for years, they didn't expect a response.
We're going to try to contact the original restaurant owner. I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner.
After only a few short weeks, the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed its doors once again. To this day, it remains unclear whether the investigation was a continuation of the 1985 missing children case or if Afton himself had resumed his killings, hidden once more within the Spring Bonnie suit. It's unclear exactly what William Afton did after the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed down, but in 1993, the restaurant reopened once again. This time, he made sure to hire a night security guard to make sure nobody gets in to experience the wrath of the roaming animatronics. This security guard is you, the player character in Five Nights at Freddy's, but many fans have speculated that this guard, whose name is Michael, is actually Afton's eldest son, Michael Afton. We know it's November 1993 from the paychecks Michael receives. His night shift runs from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., and he's paid after completing 5 nights. 5 Nights at Freddy's. Is this where you want to be? Assuming his first day was a Monday and payday fell on a Friday, we can estimate his hourly wage at around $4, the US minimum wage between 1991 and 1996. However, the 12th of November, the date listed on Michael's paycheck at the end of FNaF, only landed on a Friday in 1993. So we can assume that Five Nights at Freddy's 1 takes place in 1993. Michael's employment was short-lived. After just 1 week, he was terminated on the grounds of odor and tampering with the animatronics. There has always been a theory that Michael took the job at the pizzeria at the suggestion, or perhaps at the instruction, of his father, William Afton. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie is a separate canon, but it's worth noting that this is how it goes in the film.
It's a security gig. Full disclosure, it's not great, right? High turnover, that's what we call in the business, but you get to be your own boss, sort of. And you only have to worry about one thing, keeping people out.
At some point, after losing his ownership position and the many restaurant closures, there seems to be a shift in the sadist killer. It appears that Afton now wants to free the souls of the children that he killed that were trapped within the animatronics. Perhaps this is why William set Michael up with the security job, to mold him into a protector of his darkest secrets. By the late 1990s, Afton sold his remaining company, Afton Robotics LLC, and it became a subsidiary of Fazbear Entertainment. Soon after, the company opened Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental, an underground facility housing the Funtime animatronics salvaged from the now-defunct Circus Babies pizza place.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment. Unlike most entertainment venues, our robotic entertainers are rented out for private parties during the day.
Now seemingly committed to freeing the souls that he had once condemned, William put a new plan into motion, one involving his son. Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental placed a job ad in Screws, Bolts, and Hairpins magazine, and William told Michael to apply. His intention was for Michael to find Circus Baby and, in doing so, to free Elizabeth's trapped soul. But his plan would not give him the results he expected. Earlier, I compared Afton to Victor Frankenstein, another man destroyed by his own creation. Victor spent his final days chasing the monster he'd unleashed, desperate to destroy it and the horror that it represented. But in the end, he failed. His creation survived him, outliving its maker as a living monument to his sins. There's even an aspect of the creation outliving the creator in our world. The novel Frankenstein refers to the scientist Victor Frankenstein, but it is his monster that endures in the world of pop culture. Just as Five Nights at Freddy's true antagonist is William Afton, but the face of the franchise is clearly the Freddy Fazbear animatronic. The animatronics, now possessed by the vengeful souls of the children he killed, started to come after him, or any other adult who wore his signature purple color.
But the characters have been acting very unusual, almost aggressive toward the staff. They interact with the kids just fine, but when they encounter an adult, they just stare.
Afton had become haunted by what he'd built. The animatronics were no longer his triumph, they were his torment. Like Victor, he wanted to end what he had started, to silence the monsters that carried his guilt. Perhaps freeing them was his way of trying to finish the task that Victor never could, to undo the monster's legacy. Or perhaps it was something darker, an illustration of control over the only thing that had ever truly escaped him. At the same time his son Michael began work at Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental, William returned to the abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Inside, he found the mascots still haunted by the children he had murdered. One by one, he lured them into the back rooms, just as he had done years before, and dismantled their metal bodies, believing it would finally set their spirits free. But he miscalculated. Freeing the souls didn't bring him peace, it brought him retribution. Now freed from their animatronic shells, the ghosts turned on William. Enraged, they chased him through the back rooms until he took refuge inside the only thing he had left, the Spring Bonnie suit. The tool he once used to kill, he now used to hide in. But the restaurant had long since been abandoned, and over time, the roof had decayed, allowing rain to fall inside. One such leak was directly above the Spring Bonnie suit, causing the spring lock mechanism to malfunction, crushing his body inside. What followed was not an instant death, but a slow, excruciating mutilation, Afton's punishment for the pain he had inflicted on others. The souls of the children seemed to disappear after this. Somehow, the doors are sealed, locking Afton's body away for the next 23 years or so. During the time following his physical death, a number of key events that he set into motion play out. First, back at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, I feel like that needs an abbreviation more than FNaF. Let's call it CZsWorld. Back at CZsWorld, Michael Afton successfully finds Circus Baby. But before he could free his sister's soul, he was deceived and captured by an entity known as Ennard, an amalgamation of the Funtime Animatronics. Ennard dreamed of escaping the underground facility, but trapped in a twisted endoskeleton, it needed a human body to hide within, a machine designed to extract the mechanical innards of the animatronics. He was scooped and killed, leaving his body hollowed out so that Ennard could wear him as a disguise and escape the underground facility. Eventually, Ennard is ejected from the body, retreating to the sewers to hide. But Michael didn't stay dead. In a hidden cutscene from Five Nights at Freddy's sister location, we see Michael's apparent revival. It's complicated, but fans have agreed on the interpretation that his soul returned to his own decaying body, reanimating it. Michael then began searching for his father, perhaps driven by the last memory he had, the job that William had sent him to do. For about 23 years, William Afton remained trapped in the pizzeria backrooms with his mangled corpse entombed inside of Spring Bonnie. It wasn't until the year 2023 that Fazbear Entertainment announced plans for a new attraction, Fazbear's Fright, a horror experience inspired by the legends surrounding the infamous restaurant. It would feature original props, recovered relics, and replicas of the animatronics that once haunted the pizzeria. I find it interesting that the next development for Fazbear Entertainment, taking what was intended as wholesome family fun and embracing the horror and creep factor that people saw in it, mirrors the decision made by the developer Scott Cawthon when he released Chipper and Sons Lumber Co. People were creeped out by it, so he decided to embrace horror for his next release, Five Nights at Freddy's. It makes me wonder if there's a deeper connection between Cawthon and his main antagonist. Both are creators who, like Victor Frankenstein, lost control of their creations. While Afton's animatronics went on to cause mayhem, Cawthon's game series upended his own life, thrusting the previously very private and reserved developer into a spotlight brighter than he could have possibly imagined. I don't think this is an aspect of the character that Cawthon initially set out to project, but something that resonated with him more and more as the franchise's notoriety grew with each sequel. In recent decades, nostalgia has become a profitable commodity. Adults spending money on the trinkets of their childhood, chasing the comfort of simpler times. Entire industries have been built on that longing. From vinyl records and retro video games to anniversary reboots and theme park revivals, memory itself has become a product. Even companies like Chuck E. Cheese, once symbols of family fun, now trade on nostalgia to survive.
Chuck E. Cheese is leveling up for us grown-ups.
Yeah, the company has launched Chuck's Arcade. It is an adults-only spin-off featuring classic games like Donkey Kong and Mortal Kombat, offering prizes, retro merchandise, and even pizza, beer, and wine.
Their animatronic mascots, once a marvel of children's entertainment, are now relics of a bygone era, kept alive through retro merchandise and the promise of visiting happier days. On hearing about the new Fazbear's Fright attraction, Michael Afton once again took a job as a night security guard.
The attraction opens in like a week, so we have to make sure everything works and nothing catches on fire. You'll be starring as the security guard. So not only will you be monitoring the people on the camera as they pass through, to make sure no one steals anything or makes out in the corner, but you'll also be a part of the show.
There's no better way to staff your horror attraction than with a previously fired security guy who is technically a zombie at this point. The last important detail before we get back to William Afton regards Michael's motives. After everything the Afton family had lost, Michael wanted to prevent the opening, to sabotage the attraction before history could repeat itself. 1 week before the grand opening, he began working the night shift. In preparation for the opening of the horror attraction, Fazbear's Fright, staff searched the ruins of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza for props and memorabilia, but they found far more than they expected.
First of all, we found some vintage audio training cassettes. Dude, these are like prehistoric. I think they were like training tapes for like other employees or something like that. So I thought we could like have them playing like over the speakers as people walk through the attraction. Dude, that makes this feel legit, man. But I have an even better surprise for you. You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
Hidden behind sealed doors, they discovered the Spring Bonnie suit, unaware that Afton was still trapped inside, and they placed the suit on display in the attraction. While mistakenly using an actual corpse as part of an entertainment attraction might sound insane, there are actually rumors that Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean ride contains real human skeletons. was. The story goes that replica skeleton tech was not convincing enough when the ride was first built, so they purchased real skeletons from UCLA's medical center. I talk more about it in my Mickey Mouse horror history, which all you mascot horror fans should definitely cue.
In Pirates, there is a real school. It's actually in the captain's quarters.
That night, Springtrap awoke, haunting the dark halls and tormenting the guard, who again is heavily implied to be his son, Michael. But by the end of his first week, Michael had succeeded in his goal of setting the facility ablaze, burning Fazbear's Fright and his father along with it. Once again, to hide the truth, Fazbear Entertainment covers up the incident, claiming the fire was a result of faulty wiring. It's unclear whether Michael intended to destroy the vessel containing his father along with the attraction. What we do know is that he was aware that Springtrap survived the inferno. At some point afterward, Michael returned to the ruins and confronted him, telling his father that he had done as he was asked, that he had found his sister, and that he believed he had finally set her free.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there.
Later that same year, as William Afton lingered in the charred remains of Fazbear's Fright, his old friend and business partner, Henry Emily, was putting the final pieces of his own plan into motion, to end the cycle once and for all and lay the ghosts of the past to rest. Still determined to destroy what his father had created, Michael Afton answered an advertisement from Fazbear Entertainment, an invitation to become a franchise owner.
Now it's time to put all your eggs into one basket and take a huge gamble on your future. A gamble that comes with a 100% chance of success in some cases. What are we talking about? We're talking about becoming a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee.
Under the guise of opening a new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, Michael began the process of setting up the restaurant. As part of the job, he was instructed to recover old animatronics that had been discarded and found in back alleys across town. Each was to be salvaged, repaired, and repurposed for use in the new location. But this was no ordinary business venture. It was a trap carefully disguised as a franchise opportunity. William Afton, still trapped within the Springtrap suit, was found in the alley by Michael, most logically planted there by Henry Emily. Once he's returned to the restaurant, a series of tests are conducted on him and he's deemed salvageable. But William Afton was no fool. Beneath the mechanical husk, he understood exactly what was happening, and he knew this new pizzeria wasn't a real revival.
What a deceptive calling. I knew it was a lie the moment I heard it, obviously. But it is intriguing nonetheless.
Once all of the animatronics were gathered together, Henry Emily enters the building and sets his plan into motion. He ignites the fire that would consume everything: the restaurants, the animatronics, and the sins of the past. I told you, if there's any constant in Afton's story, it's bad parenting and restaurants constantly being set on fire. This isn't exactly uncharted territory for this type of restaurant though. One of the most common occurrences at Chuck E. Cheese, other than the fights that are constantly breaking out, are minimum wage employees relentlessly needing to dial the fire department.
Happy birthday! 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, on fire!
Emily had designed an escape route for the volunteer that he believed had taken the job, but when he saw who was inside, he realized it was Michael Afton, and that Michael had no intention of leaving.
And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby.
As the flames engulf the restaurant, Henry, Michael, the possessed animatronics, and William all burn alongside it.
This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should.
Henry had hoped that by destroying the restaurant and all who remained inside, the trapped souls of the children could finally find peace. But for William Afton, a different fate awaited.
And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
At the end of each FNaF game, there's a mode called Custom Night, which allows the player to adjust the animatronic behavior and difficulty. The final mainline game of the original series was called Ultimate Custom Night, and was initially thought to just be an expansion of this mode that used elements such as characters and locations of each of the previous games. But players discovered that it also moved forward the lore, and theorized that in Ultimate Custom Night, you're playing as William Afton, who is now trapped in his own personal hell, forced to an eternity of jump scares by the monsters that he created.
I recognize you, but I'm not afraid of you. Not anymore. Seeing you powerless is like music to me.
It also contains an unlockable minigame called Old Man Consequence, where there's a hidden Easter egg of Afton's Torment. When the gameplay is sped up, you can hear him screaming for help, calling out for the only two people who ever truly knew him, his son and his old friend. Even in death, William Afton cannot escape the consequences of what he created. The father, the inventor, and the killer is trapped forever in the machinery of his own making. A few years later, Fazbear Entertainment hired an indie developer, Silver Parasol Games, to create a VR game based on the company's own dark and controversial history. Rather than denying their past, Fazbear Entertainment decided once more to embrace it, turning their family-friendly mascots into icons of horror. In our world, this game is known as Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, a collection of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 through 3 that you can play in a VR headset. But in-universe, the game is known as the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience. I like to compare it to how Scream has the in-universe stab films, or how the Ring novel exists in-universe in the Ring franchise. But as with most modern games, they had the brilliant idea to rush production by cutting corners. In an effort to speed up development, the devs were provided with circuit boards salvaged from the original animatronics to scan into the game's code. But hidden within those fragments of hardware, something dark was lurking. Traces of William Afton's soul still lingered inside the Springtrap circuit boards. When they were digitized, those remnants were carried into the game itself, allowing Afton to escape his personal hell and take on a new digital form. Within the game's code, Glitchtrap was born, a malicious program formed from the remnants of William Afton's soul. No longer bound by flesh, Afton had become pure data, a virus able to infect minds as easily as machines. During beta testing, Silver Parasol Games employed a small team of testers to ensure that the game was ready for release. One of them, Jeremy, was the first to encounter the digital form of Afton. For those keeping track at home, this is actually the third Jeremy in the FNaF timeline, after Jeremy, the child killed by Afton who possessed the initial Bonnie animatronic, and Jeremy Fitzgerald, the security guard in FNaF 2. If there's anything Scott Cawthon loves more than setting restaurants on fire, it's people named Jeremy. The general consensus seems to be that Cawthon just enjoys messing with the fandom and making things confusing, which leads to more online discussion and like a million game theory videos. At first, Jeremy reported strange visual bugs and auditory glitches in the game, but soon his behavior began to change. Glitchtrap then began to appear within the code as a figure, a man in a yellow rabbit suit, and whispered to Jeremy through the game. Over time, Jeremy's mental state deteriorated. He became numb to the scares within the VR game and was plagued by nightmares and paranoia.
I had created a series of logs for you documenting the troubled development of this VR game that you're now testing, in hopes that you, whoever you are, and whatever team you're with, will abandon development. Eventually,
Glitchtrap influenced Jeremy to cut his face with a paper slicer. The tester then placed a VR headset on his head and entered the testing room one last time. This led to his death, which was quietly covered up by the company. Another developer, known only as Tape Girl, later discovered Glitchtrap. While reviewing corrupted files, she uncovered what she described as a virus. Disturbed by its presence, she began recording a series of audio logs, hiding them within the game for future testers to find.
Jeremy complained of nightmares when he came in this morning. He wasn't talking about it like someone telling a friend about his dreams, though. He was pale. Looked like he hadn't eaten in days.
Her intention was to leave behind a trail of warnings, instructions on how to destroy Glitchtrap. But Afton, who I will now just refer to as Glitchtrap, was one step ahead of her and attached himself to her files. By creating a hidden, protected area for her recordings, she had inadvertently given him a safe space to hide in the game's data. In a last effort to stop him, Tape Girl ran a fragmentation program that broke the game's code, shattering both the audio recordings and Glitchtrap into scattered data fragments. But when those fragments were later recovered by the beta tester Vanessa and played in order, the virus was reassembled, allowing Glitchtrap to return once again. Glitchtrap then manipulated Vanessa, possessing her and trapping her consciousness in a digital world, a game called Princess Quest 2, which I'm sure would have made an amazing haunted cartridge creepypasta within the world of FNaF, which someone should definitely write, and send to me, please. Within this digital prison, Vanessa's mind was locked away, while Glitchtrap took control of her body. Around 2030, nearly a decade after the fire that destroyed Fazbear's Fright, Fazbear Entertainment unveiled its most ambitious project yet, Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex. That's Mega Pizzaplex, not Pizza Megaplex like I said in the Fazbear episode. To be fair, I'm not sure that Pizzaplex is an actual word, but yeah. The attraction was an evolution of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza from 45 years ago, a sprawling, high-end hybrid of arcade, play center, and restaurants. If Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was the equivalent of Chuck E. Cheese or Showbiz Pizza, then Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex is more of a Disney Quest, Dave & Buster's, or ESPN Zone. The Pizzaplex dazzled with neon lights, endless games, and a brand new lineup of glam rock animatronics designed to captivate a new generation. But behind the lights and laughter, something darker lingered, hidden in the shadows beneath the ground. The mega Pizzaplex had been built directly over the ruins of the pizzeria that Henry Emily and Michael Afton had burned down in 7 years earlier, supposedly ending it all. In the aftermath of that fire, the building had collapsed into a massive sinkhole, burying its remains deep below the new complex, an enormous forgotten cavern lying directly beneath Roxy Raceway. At some point after the attraction's grand opening, Glitchtrap found his way into the Pizzaplex's systems. It's unclear exactly how this was achieved, but through psychological manipulation, he guided Vanessa into securing a job as the facility's night security guard. So we can assume that it was Vanessa who transferred Glitchtrap's data into the Pizzaplex. From there, the infection began. Under his influence, Vanessa lured each of the glamrock animatronics down into the depths of the complex where Glitchtrap's code corrupted them one by one. His virus spread through their circuits like a disease, draining their power and bending their will to his own. As the infection took hold, the animatronics began to decay, their energy feeding Glitchtrap while he was still trapped within the system. But Afton, even in digital form, would soon continue his evil work, going after pizza-craving kids. From the footage seen in one of the multiple endings in Security Breach, we can see that more children have gone missing. A young orphan boy named Gregory, who we'll come back to soon, sleeps in a cardboard box outside the Pizzaplex using a newspaper for warmth. That same newspaper carries a headline about local residents continuing to go missing. Given that the original missing children incident took place back in 1985, around 50 years ago, it's clear that this isn't a reference to those events. Plus, there are 9 missing persons pictured here, which means that even decades later, William Afton's murderous desires don't seem to have stopped, and neither have the production of physical newspapers on paper for some reason. On the night of March 9th, the young orphan boy Gregory sneaks into Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex. The boy finds himself locked in after hours, trapped within the maze of arcades and attractions. Hunted by Vanessa and pursued by increasingly hostile glamrock animatronics, Gregory finds an unlikely ally in Glamrock Freddy, the only animatronic free from Glitchtrap's control. Together, the boy and the bear work to survive the night. How ironic that decades later, Afton's star creation is still his biggest adversary. But this time, he had a new ally. Through Vanessa, Glitchtrap begins the process of reclaiming his physical form. Among the ruins underneath the Pizzaplex were the burnt remains of his former body, the Springtrap suit. Vanessa places the suit into an old charging station and transfers his digital code into physical form once again, reborn as Burntrap. This is almost another Ryuji situation. If you haven't seen my Ring content, Ryuji is a character who undergoes many different names, identities, and reincarnations. Are we calling this a Ryuji situation from now on? I think we are. We started with William Afton in his human form, then he was killed wearing the Spring Bonnie suit, which he possessed, taking on the name Springtrap. That suit was then burnt, and Afton entered his own personal hell before having his circuit board scanned into a VR game where he became known as Glitchtrap. Now, Glitchtrap has once again entered the burnt Spring Bonnie suit, becoming Burntrap. Oh, and don't dive too deep into the FNaF fan art community, or you might have the misfortune of running into Thirst Trap. There are a lot of other reasons not to dive into the FNaF fan art. Look, just trust me, you don't ever want to go there. During their attempts to escape Vanessa, Gregory and Glamrock Freddy discover a hidden elevator that descends deep below the complex, into the buried ruins of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, where they come across Afton. William then attempts to seize control of Glamrock Freddy, but his plan backfires. He fails to take control of the animatronic, and Gregory reignites the remnants of Henry Emily's fire trap. Flames once again erupt, spreading through the ruins. So tally that as fire number 4. One more and you win something from the prize counter. Over the years, something else had formed in the ruins. A sprawling mass of twisted metal, a creature known as the Tangle, fused from the remnants of Afton's victims, Circus Baby, the Puppet, Bonnie, and Chica. Despite Henry Emily's attempts to free the souls earlier, their suffering persists as they remain trapped within this monstrous form. As the fire engulfs the ruins, Gregory and Glamrock Freddy manage to escape to the surface. But as William Afton struggles to flee along with them, the Tangle reaches from the fire, ensnaring him and dragging him back into the flames. Once again, Afton is consumed by the very thing he created, trapped in a hell of his own design, forever punished by the monsters that he made. The Mega Pizzaplex was closed down, but Fazbear Entertainment released a statement announcing their intention to reopen in the near future. You know, there's a word for doing the exact thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome each time. And that is where I believe William Afton's story ends. As of now, at least. I know Glitchtrap appears in Help Wanted 2, Security Breach Ruin, and Secret of the Mimic. However, this incarnation is widely agreed to be an entity named the Mimic and not William Afton himself. As the name suggests, the Mimic is a new entity mimicking his personality. Just like how talking to those AI chatbots created by celebrities doesn't mean that you're talking to the real person. If there's interest, maybe I can do an episode on the Mimic in the future. While Freddy Fazbear may be the face of the Fazbear industry, William Afton became the main antagonist, the true heart of its horror. From grieving father to sadistic killer, from flesh to metal to code, Afton's presence has haunted every incarnation of Fazbear Entertainment. He's the constant thread that ties every tragedy together, the ghost in the machine that refuses to fade. One thing that I find really interesting that I briefly touched on earlier is the fact that we never really see Afton in-game all that much, but most of his story has been interpreted through his appearances in these arcade cabinet minigames, which I think he must have been the creator of, being the only one who would have been around to tell these stories of his life. It's almost like he knows he'll be perceived as a menace and wants to leave behind these relics to show his side of events. I don't think they help absolve him or his reputation, but they do provide important context. In the Frankenstein analogy, he's more of the doctor than he is the monster. Like Victor Frankenstein, he's destroyed by what he built when his creations turn against him. Also relevant is the medium used to tell his story, through video games. Earlier, I alluded to the connection between Afton and Scott Cawthon, and I'm certainly not suggesting that Cawthon has any skeletons in his basement, as far as I know, but I think the development of Afton as a character who was overwhelmed by the success of his own entertainment products may have been influenced by what Cawthon was going through as the FNaF series rapidly grew in the 2010s. Cawthon had worked for years and years as an indie game developer before making it big with the animatronic bear. His first released game, Doofus, came out way back in 1994, and was one of 77 games currently listed on his Wikipedia page before the release of Five Nights at Freddy's. He went from family-friendly Christian games, to Metroid fan games, to mobile casino games and endless runners. I know, it's hard to believe that he didn't hit it big time with titles like Fart Hotel. Finding little success, FNaF was actually going to be one of Cawthon's last attempts at making it as a game developer, as explained in this Easter egg found on the blurry edges of a newspaper from Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Before I began work on FNaF, I had to choose what game to make out of 3 potential games, knowing that it might be my last try before having to start a new career. I bring this up to illustrate that I don't think he was really ever prepared for the success that FNaF would become. It released in 2014, around the height of the Let's Play trend on YouTube. Creators like PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye, and Markiplier were taking the industry by storm, and having one of them play your indie game could change everything.
Was that the bite of 87?
No, that was the bite of 83, but more importantly, the clip went viral. And in a YouTube landscape where ads were first starting to become big business, playing a game that scared people without having to resort to blood and guts that would get you demonetized was very attractive for these gaming creators. Once Markiplier played it, Five Nights at Freddy's took off faster than his fans could buy out all the cheap red hair dye from a Halloween store. And after 2 decades of games that went nowhere, I don't think that Scott knew how to handle the pressure. Like a Springlocked suit exposed to moisture, he would begin to break down. Later that same year, after the release of Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in 2014, Scott Cawthon blacked out his entire website, replacing it with a one-word message reading offline. One of the few places that he did communicate with fans was on the forums of Steam, the platform where his games were listed. On Halloween 2016, he addressed criticisms of FNaF developing a toxic fan base. For the most part, he defends his fans, saying that every fan base has a toxic side, but that doesn't define the fan base as a whole. But there were valid criticisms. But to those people who feel that they have valid criticisms of the fan base, I would just say this. We know. We all know. We've all seen the bad fan art, the bad fan fiction, and the rest of the dark underbelly of the FNaF fandom that we wish we could forget before we close our eyes at night. He goes on to highlight what he calls the awesome side of the fan base, which I think is a healthy way to look at it, but I can't help but notice that there is one thing that seemed to get under his skin more than anything. The fact that he could no longer control the monster that he had created. Just like Frankenstein, and just like Afton. There was even a conspiracy theory created by fans who were convinced that Scott was secretly dropping numbers that represented coordinates in his work, leading them to look up these supposed coordinates and spam some random pizza place in Virginia with phone calls, to which Scott basically had to beg them to stop. Outside of questionable fan activity, there was also a tremendous pressure with so many eyes now on his work to make something that people would like. The same kind of pressure that I talked about when I made the Black Swan video and analyzed Nina's descent into obsession in trying to perfect her ballet routine. The same can be applied to game development. He discussed it in a Steam community post in June 2017, right before taking a hiatus. With each game's release, I think the expectations get higher and higher for the next, and rightfully so. Each game should be better than the last. But that pressure starts to mount, and I fear that I've been neglecting other things in my life for the sake of trying to keep up with those mounting expectations. So after giving this a lot of thought, I've decided that I'm going to stop working on it. I'm not going to reveal anything else about what the game was, and I've asked other people involved to never divulge anything either. It's just not going to be talked about. The next game didn't come out for another year, a very long time compared to the first 5 games, which all released in a 2-year span from 2014 to 2016. This was his attempt to push back against the oppression that stemmed from his creation, just as William Afton and Victor Frankenstein did before. And for a while, this worked, but like his fictional predecessors, he would ultimately fall victim to it. In a June 2021 Reddit post titled "My Response and Maybe Last Post," he described the backlash he got for a political party he supported, which resulted in harassment, doxing, threats, and he and his pregnant wife living in fear because of the things said about him online. And so, Scott announced his retirement. His successful game development career had been destroyed by the very game that made it in the first place. So just as Afton told his life story scattered across these arcade minigames found throughout the Five Nights at Freddy's series, so too did Scott Cawthon, telling his own story about his destruction at the hands of his proudest creation through the subtext found when analyzing his purple-coated antagonist, William Afton. Afton always depicts himself in the games as this sort of monstrous-looking purple pixel figure that fans dubbed early on as Purple Guy. Scott's limited online presence is similarly depicted by a pixelated, monochrome humanoid profile picture that looks like it would be right at home in one of those arcade games. It's hard to say if we've seen the end of Cawthon or Afton in the world of gaming, but I have a feeling that we've only just seen the beginning of their work in the world of film.
I always come back.
Whether you're a seasoned fan or grabbing your first slice of this universe, I recommend you check out my previous FNaF video where I analyze the complete history of mascot horror's greatest icon, Freddy Fazbear. You'll find that video on the left. Also, check out my other channel, Pumpkin Metal, for band history episodes on your favorite pop punk and metal bands, and make sure to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell, and select all notifications, and I will see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.